Welcome to MedTech Smarts with Rita, the podcast where we explore what it really takes to bring medical innovation to market. Today's episode is a special panel discussion featuring Shavini Fernando, CEO and founder of OxiWear, and Rita King, the CEO of MethodSense, who is a regulatory expert, business strategist, and also the creator of the Lumen Logic platform. We're diving into what happens when a founder has a groundbreaking product, tight deadlines, and investors who need results ASAP. From navigating a complex FDA submission to building smart operational systems and facing an FDA audit, our guests have lived it all, and they're here to share the insights they gained along the way. Shavini, could you tell us a bit about OxiWear, what it is, who it helps, and how does it stand apart from typical monitoring systems?
So OxiWear is this device which I'm wearing on my ear, and we are the first pulse oximeter in the market that is FDA cleared for continuous blood oxygen measurements during both still as well as motion conditions, and also to be tested across all skin tones. So the whole thing started because I myself is a patient with severe pulmonary hypertension. So for me, my oxygen levels drop when I do even the slightest activity, but I'm athlete and I was not ready to stop what I'm doing. I'm still adrenaline junkie, and I faced 4 cardiac arrests, 3 strokes because of low oxygen levels. And I couldn't find a single device in the market that can track my blood oxygen while I'm active. Because every pulse oximeter in the market is only developed and also FDA cleared for continuous readings during still, while someone is still, right? Or for spot testing. So for you to get a reading on those devices, you need to keep your hands straight or not move. Otherwise, those devices can't measure your numbers. But the thing is, when you are still, you are normalized. Your oxygen levels are fine. Your numbers drop when you're walking around doing activity, and especially for a patient with compromised lungs or a heart. For us, our numbers drop like with day-to-day small activities like bringing groceries home or bending down to lift something, right? But the thing is, at those times, none of the devices measure our numbers, and physically we have no symptoms. We are fine. Like now, I'm checking. I have my numbers in front of me now. My number is 86, right? But if it's a normal person, they would have passed out.
Yeah.
But for me, I have no symptoms. I'm fine. And so that's the tricky part. We need to know when it drops below that safe threshold our doctors has asked us to stop at. And so that's why we developed OxiWear, so that it continuously tracks my blood oxygen levels throughout the day. And then you can set the safe threshold using the app that your doctor has asked you to set it at to. And then the device starts vibrating on your ear when your numbers hit that level. So you have a sign saying, okay, stop whatever you're doing now, right? So you can pretty much look at it as a CGM, but for your lungs.
That's great. Rita, when you first encountered Shavini's product and the regulatory hurdles she might face, what ran through your mind?
Well, I have to say, when I first met Shavini, and I can say that, of course, she's an amazing person. She's also a very passionate founder, and she had a product that it was obvious that it will change the market. Because as Shavini explained, she is also the patient. So she understands the patient, and she understands what the market really needed. However, when you are also bringing innovation to market, you could run into regulatory challenges. So investors usually love the innovation. FDA sometimes is a little skeptical about the innovation. At least they want to make sure that the safety is there. So when I first met Shavini, what really impressed me was how early in her process she was, and she sought advice. She wanted to make sure she had her regulatory strategy ready from the very, very beginning as she's beginning to communicate with her investors. And this is really for a first founder to be able to think so carefully about her strategy. It's to be commended. And as we will continue explaining the story today, you will see that this ended up being a really very positive outcome for her. So yes. So when I saw the product, I knew we were dealing with her innovation. I could not wait to really help Shavini, and we did the right thing, which was to really start with a regulatory strategy, because we really needed to make sure that FDA was by our side.
So, Shavini, during your FDA submission, what turned out to be the biggest challenge that you encountered?
Everything is a challenge. Because when you go, like, none of us knows what FDA entails. It's a journey, right? You don't know what, potholes or hills you have on the way, and how much it's going to cost you. It's the absolute, black box. You keep learning as you keep doing things. And especially because we were a new device. This was not done before. And even through FDA submission, you only see what they were cleared for. It doesn't show them how much it costs this company to do FDA, right? And then when you go to investors, it's hardware. When you are raising money for hardware, investors don't like. Investors don't invest in hardware. And on top of that, when the hardware has an FDA clearance tied to it, it's a double no. It's no. No one wants to put it. So that's why, they were very skeptical. So the first thing I wanted to make sure is they understand that we know what we are doing. So when we first started with Method Sense, and what we first spoke with Rita was, we need a full plan to show the investors so that we can get our first money in. So we first did like a full timeline and the whole strategy and how we are going to address this and the estimated timeline. That timeline changed all the time. Yeah, it keeps changing because you don't know how long it will take for you to finish the work.
But
Right?
different challenges come along the way.
Yeah,
Challenges
exactly.
that you don't anticipate. You think you know it all, but
But you don't. And then also the delays in FDA. We estimate, we will send the proposal and the package to get a pre-submission meeting, then we will get it by this day. And that got pushed to almost a year.
Wow.
And that was not on Shavini. That was internal FDA challenges.
Yeah.
Actually, but who would anticipate that?
Exactly, because we all submitted in time and we had to literally email, asking when are we going to get this meeting? Our work is stuck. We can't continue. Right? Yeah. So it's so much money involved because that doesn't go more time means it's more expenses, which you didn't, calculate for.
Yeah.
Right? You're just paying people to sit and wait because we can't do any work.
Yeah.
And then in between all that, the regulatory changes, we do for one thing and they change everything, then we have to change based on that. So the whole process is, I say it's the most torturous process I have ever been, worse than my hospital visit.
Wow.
So you hear it from a first-time founder how it feels, and it all worked, and it all worked well at the end.
It's just about hanging in there. You need to hang in there. That's what I say. Sometimes now when people ask me to advise someone who's doing a medical device, I say, okay, I'm telling you the honest truth. This is what an FDA device looks like. You won't get paid for this many years. You can't make revenue for 7 years.
Wow.
Because ours is the easiest FDA clearance, and still it took us 7 years to get everything done and sell our first product. So that means the founders don't get paid until then.
Yeah.
And because you need to keep the money low for a month.
You mentioned investors earlier. Rita, can you walk us through how you balance the demands from the FDA and then the investors for Shavini at that stage?
Yeah, I think it's worth for us also clarifying as we're answering this question that, again, Shavini started early and she tried to do all the right things. But a first-time founder and with an innovative product, and as Shavini already explained, the product is seen more from the hardware standpoint, although it does have software. And then there were different type of challenges that we did not anticipate that FDA would have some internal reviewer challenges. But let's kind of break it down. So the one of the things that we did, as I mentioned earlier, was we recognized that it will be seen differently. Although we think that the risks are not as high, it will still be seen differently, and we need to make sure that the regulators, number one, understand the product, and number two, we are also clear about the expectations from the FDA. So we engaged the FDA for a pre-submission, and we had a really good meeting. But again, that doesn't mean that you have all the answers. So that was the first thing. But then we had the investor side, because a startup requires money. It's necessary. You need money. As Shavini said, you don't build a product that requires hardware, software, manufacturing. You're going to have clinical testing. You do not get all these components without funding. And that means that investors also have to understand what's really involved and what are some of the unknowns to the extent that you can identify them. Also, you have a very small team. We're talking about a founder and a couple additional team members. Try to get an entire medical device with the design history file, with the drawings and everything that's involved, with the preparations for manufacturing, with the transfer to manufacturing, because we needed units to be able to take for the clinical testing, and with unknowns, with components that maybe you think that they are medical grade, and then you go through testing, or you start some testing and you find out that maybe the strategy of component A was not as well thought as...
And the space between sensors, how it's placed in PCBs.
That's right. So there's all these details that you have to take into consideration. And a lot of times we say planning is very important. Communication, though. So when you have parties like regulators and also investors, they both have a need to understand and a need to communicate different needs. One, again, the regulator cares about safety. The investors care about the market and the speed, but they both need to understand where the hiccups are coming and what do they really mean, and what's your plan to overcome them.
Yeah, and one of the things is most of the investors don't like to take a risk. So they want to know that, I'm putting this money, is the FDA going to clear this?
Yeah.
And they don't believe me when I say it. So that's where Rita comes in, because she has more experience in handling this. Like, she's saying the same thing that I say, they believe her over me.
And that's a very good point that Shavini said.
Yeah.
I have to say, as a founder, to also have this trust. I mean, Shavini and Method Sense, we had a real trust between us. She knew when we said that this required X, and we knew when she said to us, I'm challenged with Y. So we actually were able to support each other. And when the investors, as she mentioned, she's raising money. Investors are not quite sure. They want to hear from somebody who's done it before that it will go through. And that was our job, to engage them, to explain to them, but not just to explain the process, to explain to the investors why did we believe that it will go through? What gave us the confidence when we run into different types of challenges that we can still overcome it?
Shavini, you mentioned that this entire process was at times more agonizing than your hospital stays that you've encountered. Obviously, between the investors and the FDA, was there a point where you feared everything might come undone?
Oximeter is the easiest clearance. We just had to figure out how do we navigate and handle these issues, and like it more like educate the FDA.
Yes.
Okay.
Because one of the things, like I always say, you need to talk to FDA because everything is the same for every device, right? But what I have to do is, will, like, whatever I have to do, if we have to do the same thing that we do for a CT scan, we can't do it. It doesn't work. The size is different. And we came to so many issues like that. And so it's important for you to engage with the FDA and make them understand why this doesn't work for us. And
And
because
little
one of the
things like
questions,
Shavini, yeah, you're about to say.
it's tiny things, like literally that pre-submission, one of the questions they asked was, we already have pulse oximeters in the market. Who needs continuous?
Mm.
And I wore my oxygen cannula and I told them me. And then it was a device aside, we were having a conversation as to they wanted to know, why do I need to know it? I said, look, and I know I must have been one of the most troublesome clients Rita had, because before we start the meeting, Rita says, I will handle the conversation. And then I start arguing with the FDA. And then
This is not the most difficult.
And then, no, it's just because I was amazed by the FDA, and they don't understand what the patient needs. Because you assume the FDA knows what a patient needs because they clear the devices. And they were asking me, why do you need to monitor continuously? And so I had to explain, like, look, now my number is fine. But when I walk up my hills, when I climb stairs, I can't breathe. My oxygen drops. And it came to a point, I said, I can't explain to you, because unless you have choked once in your life, you don't know what it feels like.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to explain what it feels when your oxygen drops. And then the other issue we had was they didn't like us having an alert. And the alert cannot be dropped below 92. And then I had to explain, look, for me, my numbers are always below 92. If it's ringing at 92, I can't wear this. So what's the whole point of even spending money on FDA if this is a prescription device? This goes to people like me.
Yeah.
And we are all at 90. If the alert is at 92, the whole day it will be vibrating. It doesn't meet the purpose of why it was built in the first place.
Yeah.
And then we had to come to an agreement that the alarm is at 85, at least let us drop it till 87. And then there was another test, which was, it was not the drop test, it was called the impact test, where you have to, so this test, it's legit for a CT scan or MRI machine, because you had to drop a 6-pound heavy metal ball on the device and make sure that the device doesn't break. And then if it doesn't break the first time, you turn the device and again drop it. So you have to do it for every 6 angles of the device and make sure it doesn't break. And I was fascinated. I was like, okay, so you are in a device, a 6-pound heavy wrecking ball is coming on your head. And if that actually knocks on your head, you have better problems to worry about than this tiny device breaking.
The device is the least of your problems at that point.
And what Shavini, just for our audience, what Shavini is describing with so much, so in such an entertaining way, which I really love it, is IEC 6601-1 testing that is required for all medical devices. But again, you get to see that unique little tiny device still had to go through certain requirements, and you can also hear the founder, how the founder thinks, and what the regulation was there to potentially, I guess, protect the potential user, but some things do not seem reasonable for the purpose. And this is where it's really important to be able to find the happy medium, because safety
Yeah,
is the outcome.
because we ended up smashing about 40 devices, and that was all money. So finally, we said, can we talk to the FDA and see how we can, sort this?
Yeah.
So then we had to get physician letters to justify that why this testing doesn't, is not relevant for us.
For the device, yes.
Yeah. So there are certain things like that where you need to you are it blows my mind for certain tests. I'm like, huh?
So through all this, you
And
brought up a pre-sub meeting. So
yeah.
Rita, I assume this is something you would have pushed for early, but why is that such a key step?
Yeah, I think Shavini made a lot of good points. We are very interested in engaging with the FDA early for many reasons. And I'll just say one of them is to make sure that not only they understand the device, but they become a partner in the process. Like Shavini explained, when you run into different kind of challenges with an innovation, and you need to understand that this product, while it was innovative, it was not a de novo submission. It was really a 510K. So, and Shavini also used the words earlier. It's supposed to be a simple submission, but it was truly a different type of product with very different indications for use, and he had to really make sure that it was understood and understood from many different components. So engaging the FDA early allowed us to explain the differences, agree on the indications, agree on the type of testing, and even later we had to still continue the explanations because, as Shavini mentioned, you run into other kind of challenges that maybe they came in as part of the execution of certain tests. So a risk-benefit analysis is other items that you get engaged in, but the pre-submission meeting, I consider it a very critical, strategic approach for partnership with the regulator.
Yeah, because one of the things was initially even the FDA was thinking was that we are de novo, right? And then the pre-submission helped us to explain to them why this is not a de novo.
That's right.
Because there's already sensors that are hooked to monitors which you can use while someone's walking around, right? The only difference for us is that we are wireless, right? But the function doesn't change. So then after discussing, we were able to discuss with them how we can do the motion testing and how we can do the standard blood arterial testing and still be a 510K class 2 classification. So engaging with them from the beginning and clarifying those stuff helped us to plan the clinical trials. And also something that we did for clinical trials was we changed the protocol. So that took a long time because the initial protocol had only it was 80% white skin and 2% dark skin. And for me, I was like, I'm brown. Where am I in this?
Yeah.
So I told UCSF that, no, I want this to be at least 25 up. People with equal skin tones, please sign up people for that. And then they said, no, but then only we learned that this is the protocol. And they said, you can't change that. So I was like, okay, you sign up the people, I'll talk to the FDA and get the permission for that. So that took us a long time to keep writing up and down, asking how we can change this criteria. So that's one of the reasons why we are the only one currently. Now they changed the draft, which is quite identical to what we did. So we are the first to be tested because we were a part of that whole change with the FDA.
You hear the innovation, you hear the strategy, and it's like, again, it sounds simple, but the motivation, the commitment, the dedication, and the trust had to be there between all parties, because we're all partners in this innovation. This product would not be in the market if it was not for that commitment. We all believe in it, and we have to figure out how we're going to get every party aligned to the overall strategy.
Yeah, and FDA knew how committed we were, because when we went for the meeting, another meeting after they asked for additional requirements at the meeting, they said, we know how committed you are to this, so let's try to figure out how we can do this. And I was laughing.
So again, you can see that once the partnership is there, everybody is interested in figuring out how to help. And I think that is really an example here of a committed founder, along with alignment of the different parties, which now it's a nice story to say, but when you are in the dance,
it's torture. Now you laugh, now you think about all that, and you keep laughing about all the things. But when it was actually happening, it was so much fresh, because stressing, because in your mind you're like, oh wow, now does this mean how much more money do I need?
right.
Because you race around and tell the investors, this will take me to A or B, and then you go back and say, I need this much more now again to go to the same milestone that I promised them earlier. And I still remember when the additional requirements came, they wanted us to run the testing again. And I literally had to go to all my investors and said, we need just $5,000 from each of you.
I do remember actually those days, Shavini.
I emailed to every investor and said, we have this many in our cap table. If each of you can just write me 5,000 more, we can raise this money without going to outsiders, and which will be faster. And so that transparency has to be there between you, the investors, FDA, everyone. So you're all in a line. I think that's very important. That's one of the reasons why even with hurdles, we were able to get through stuff faster.
That's very
true. With all of this, then, you mentioned you thought this would be a simple submission. Then you're running into issues with investment, and then also the standards being changed and wanting to make sure that things fit for everyone. Because, you brought up the skin tone differences and pulse oximeters. So with that, how did you keep your team focused and organized while managing all this?
I would say I say everyone in my team is crazy. They're just like me. You need, I always say, vibe attracts your tribe. When everyone's the same as you and they're all willing to go that extra mile, it's easy to get work done. And to be honest, until FDA submission, none of us were even paid properly. Because we had to, it was a decision between, do we get ourselves paid, or do we get the work done so we can get a higher pay later? So we can show the investors that, look, we are doing this is how committed we are. Right?
And we also had to make the company look like a medical device company.
Yeah.
That's really one of the additional things that we organized from the very beginning. Was we brought not just the strategy, but also Looming Logic. And Looming Logic is a platform that enabled Shavini to really get her little team organized, because there was a lot of documents to be exchanged, a lot of partners, a lot of...
I was like, who reads this?
Yeah, Shavini thought that maybe EQMS or QMS in general means a paperweight, but it didn't. She had to learn that
there was so much paper. And I told Rita, Rita, I did math because I hate writing. And everyone in my team are all developers. We all did engineering because we hate writing. And now all we do is just writing.
But we did write a lot, Shavini, right?
Yeah, so we were doing the bare minimum and getting Rita and team to write everything for us, because first of all, we had no clue how to do this document.
And that is
right?
the other thing. That's
Even
true.
still, we are learning.
Well, that is true about I mean, I
Yeah,
think this is the you have this great idea, multi-billion-dollar market, but now somebody says to you, you're going to be a medical device, and a medical device means you got to have a quality management system. You got to be able to demonstrate that every test that you've done, it's documented. You have the records. Your investors are putting pressure on you on the timeline. Why do you need this extra 5,000? Whatever the milestone may be. So that's why from the very beginning, and again, the exception that we have here with Shavini is not only she brought to market an innovation, but she knew how to really bring around her people that she could trust, and she could actually help her get to the next step. Because while she did not
yeah,
know what it means to create a medical device, she trusted. I mean, she trusted MethodSense when we said, Shavini, you need an EQMS, and we're going to implement this immediately. And this is we're going to put the Looming Logic in place to help both from quality, from regulatory, from engineering, from partnership management, such as like supplier management. But she did not hesitate. She recognized the value, and that what also helped us overcome the challenges as they
yeah.
were coming.
Because one of the things from the beginning, like it's one of my work policies. Like wherever you need experts, you need to let the expert handle. Because I don't know what needs to be done.
Yep.
You ask me software development, you ask me anything regarding development stuff, I will answer you. That's my expertise. But anything outside that, like, I don't know how to develop this device. So that's why I got George on board because he knew how to do it. Right. And even in the team, what I ask everyone is, you're the expert. You tell me what we need to do. You tell me how much it's going to cost. Because my job as a CEO is making sure that everything is lined up for them and the money is there so that we can move things fast and we don't jump into hurdles. So you one of like, I think something that people think is, oh, these things we can do. There are certain things we can do, but there are things you don't know how to do.
Yeah.
And that time and money you waste trying to learn and do things is absolute waste if you have to come back and redo stuff.
That's right.
So you might as well let an expert handle that and in one shot get things done than having to go back and redo everything.
So you had your internal team, and then you were working with the MethodSense team and the Lumen Logic platform. So
Yeah.
Rita, Lumen Logic, can you tell me a little bit about it, and what gaps were you really solving for Shavini and then other people with it?
Yeah, actually, Looming Logic has a story of its own as well, because we always, at MethodSense, we have a lot of expertise in the regulated industry. And we've been in the space for 25 years, understand the founders really well, support them with strategy and with the execution, take them all the way from beginning to the end. Understand the regulators, understand the investors, understand the business mind. However, we still, while we knew, and we have a lot, I should say, we have a lot of software background and experience. And we wanted to figure a way to help the industry. But we did not go based on our ideas. We actually engaged in lengthy conversations with over 65 different life science companies to really make sure we understood the needs of the founders, like Shavini, to really understand what is this that they're truly looking for. And what we understood is they need an integrated solution, a product that can start small, but as their company evolve, it will continue to evolve with them. And that's what a platform really brings. So, and also being committed to the industry, it means that it doesn't stop. The development and the growth of the product called Looming Logic has not stopped. It continues to grow, and it will continue to grow, because as the industry changes and the needs and the pressures also change, we will continue to change with them. But our goal is, from day one, you're able to put in a matter of a few days, your EQMS and then immediately to bring all your partners in and to be able to show them that you are worthy what you're claiming that you are and what you're gonna be executing, because now they can clearly see how your plan is going to be executed, how your documents are going to be monitored, how all other types of components of the medical device commercialization process will evolve.
So, Shavini, you worked with MethodSense, you used the Lumen Logic platform. How did it all turn out?
I'm still learning, but now I think after, so that's why for everything we were like, can you please handle this? I don't know how to do this. So literally, Dylan was on my speed dial.
And Dylan is a great team member here as well.
Yeah, and Rita, like, I used to disturb her every time during dinner.
No, she didn't. But we knew if we saw Shavini on the phone, on the cell phone, we have to pick up.
Yep.
And because one of the things is I don't want to do things without double checking. So I always, before we do something, I'm like, let me check with Dylan, let me check with Rita. We call for everything and they were always available. It was very easy. Even on Lumen Logic, like every time I get locked out, I keep messaging saying, I forgot my password. Then they would like reset it then and there. Then now that we are more involved in the documents and we understand exactly what each document is for. Finally, like that's what I'm saying. Like it's so much documents that you need to do, and when you're not someone who has done it, you don't know what they are, and what
Yeah.
it does, and how it should be done, and the order it should be done, and that this document actually can be changed. Even we didn't know. Now only we understand. Now that we are using the whole platform and uh, now that we are doing everything in the order it should be done on our own, like what each document is meant for and how we should do it. And we had our first audit, and because everything was in place, it was very easy for us. And at the audit, I learned that they do read every document.
And that is really important, Shavini, for founders to understand and hear.
Yeah.
Because Anna, what Shavini says, she got her clearance.
Yeah.
But after her clearance, she also got the first audit.
Oof.
And as she's explaining, she was able, and for this audit, she pretty much went through on her own because she had everything in place.
Wow.
So,
Yeah.
and that is a pretty big deal. So again,
Yeah, and the thing is, we have two officers. We only got like audited for one office, which does the whole device manufacturing and stuff. And even for that, we printed more than 5 A4 bundles because he wanted everything hard copy. And so you can imagine that was only half of the documents we submitted to FDA, which was 5 A4 bundles, which we printed. And by the end of the FDA submission, I have forgotten what my original signature looks like. Because for a day, there were days I signed about 2,000 pages.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it looks like, how doctors write prescriptions towards the end.
Yeah.
And I have to go back to 2011 documents and to figure out how my original signature looked like now, because I can't remember how it looked like.
Your signature
And there
used
were
to be a
days-
signature, and now it's just like a straight line
Yeah.
at the end.
Exactly.
she got the electronic signatures, but she's describing some very detailed validation records that she
Yeah,
really went
you
through.
have to ink it. And there were days that we were sitting in the office till like 11 in the night, and then eventually I was there even till 11 in the night until we finished the stuff. So I think it's that the trust and the partnership, the strength of the partnership you have is very expensive. So I always say that really, they are more like a part of the OxiWear family.
Yeah.
Thank you, Shavini. We feel the same way.
So, FDA, getting clearance, being audited, something that we've talked about before, Rita, is the FDA is not your enemy here. So, can you just tell me a little bit about, someone getting audited? It doesn't mean they've done something wrong. Like, why would they be audited?
Yeah, it's part of the process. I mean, in Europe, it's actually, you do go through annual audits. In the US, it's a little bit more random. It depends on the schedule of the FDA, but it also depends on the criticality of the device. Sometimes it can be as simple as you happen to be in the same city as the city that the auditor happened to visit, and he has a
He's
couple.
next door, so he was next door.
So you happen to be, on the like it's stream in a way of the FDA pathway. But the reality of this, or you had complaints. Shavini did not have to worry about this. It just happened to be her. She happened to be, I guess, on the path of the auditor, and we have a lot of little companies that they get to be audited right away, and others that they've been in the market for years before they get audited. So that is really one of the reasons. But the audit is a very stressful experience because you do not, and especially when you go through the first time. Now, you have a very brave soul here with Shavini because she really, she whatever she does, she tries to really do it well and to go into it. And as she explained, she started with knowing very little about the regulatory pathway, and she learned a lot. But the most important thing that I feel like Shavini learned is how important it is to stay organized and to be able to take seriously the development of a medical device, which she actually did. And that's why when the audit happened at an unexpected time and so fast, she didn't have to worry about it because Looming Logic had kept her organized.
Yeah.
And then one thing that Looming Logic does, it keeps track of what you have done, of whether it's your versions or your signatures or your design changes or complaints. So it's not just for the preparation of your QMS or your design history files or your submissions. It's actually post-commercialization, particularly post-commercialization, because after that you're going to have a lot more partners. And you're also going to think about your next design, your next idea, because you don't stop, or your next country, because Shavini has a tremendous opportunity. Her product has multinational opportunity and again, a multi-billion-dollar market. So for her, it's only the beginning. So now she needs to multi-purpose her documents and think about her strategy for the rest of the market. But by having engaged not just MethodSense, but Looming Logic from the early days, every new idea, strategy, submission becomes a lot easier. And then running her company will continue to be easier and easier.
Yeah, because it was very easy when he said all the documents. These are what I'm going to check the first day. These are what I need second day. We were able to get everything. And then the first thing he checks is your index. So it's easy to produce the index. You print it. And then from there, he asks, okay, get me this document, get me this document. So what we did was we printed everything and kept it ready, like all organized. So when he asked, we have the bundles and we know from where to quickly pull it and give. And then the files that we are unable to print because just so many pages, like 120, 130 pages, those we straight away pulled from Looming Logic and put it on the screen and showed it for him to go through and see. But he was very, like, in one way, it was a good experience for me. Now we know exactly what we need to have, like, organized and coordinated, and with all the documents we need to make sure that is done properly. And so it was a good learning experience for us, and we were glad that it happened during the first 2 months, because just if they came after like a year and if we didn't have everything sorted, and then we would have been in trouble. But now we know everything that we need to keep ready for the next audit.
Yeah.
So it was a good experience. Plus he was amazed. He said, I didn't expect for a company at your size to have a full-fledged system and everything done, because he couldn't find anything from us like during the audit. So we just had all we had to do was just editorial change in one of the documents. That's it. So it was a good audit.
And that's what we love to hear. And this is really the win for us, to be able to hear that auditors, investors, other partners look at these companies and they say, I cannot believe your size. How can you have so many components in place that you usually find them when you are a much larger company? How can you do that? And Shavini obviously chose to print things, but you didn't have to print, as you know, Shavini. But again, her first
No,
audit.
he asked. He said, I
Yes.
want everything printed. Yeah.
Oh, that's
That's
okay.
why.
That's another very
Yeah.
good point that actually, Shavini, I'm glad you mentioned. When you engage different types of solutions, one of the requirements, that's what actually what Shavini mentioned, is that there is a regulatory requirement that indicates that your records need to be in a printable format in the event that the auditor wants them printed.
Yeah.
While she could have shown them live, because obviously it's an electronic system, Looming Logic, the auditor, this particular auditor, not every auditor, but this particular auditor chose to have them in a printed format. So they're
And,
not.
and he took a whole box of papers to send to FDA.
Yes, yes.
Wow.
So the advantage that that also she has with Looming Logic is that even reports, indexes, all kinds of information is provided in printed format as well. Like she can get
Yeah.
the print ready kind of
Yeah.
feature.
So whatever we couldn't show, we showed it on Lumin Logic itself. And the ones that he was adamant that they have to be printed, we printed everything.
Yeah. So, what did this experience overall teach you about staying unified when the pressure's on? Because with an audit, pressure sounds like it's on.
My job was to make sure no one talks and only answers what was asked.
Well, she learned something through the process.
No, normally, like with my work experience, something I know is when you are at a meeting like this, it's either you say yes, no, and only answer what is asked. Do not talk more than what's asked. So the main those 2 days went like a punishment. Like I said, this is the quietest I've been for 2 days for my whole life. And on top of that, eventually, and Method Sense was also like online with us during that on Teams. So it was very easy. Like when I didn't know how to answer certain questions, she would quickly send it to me on Teams, and then I would quickly look at it and answer.
Yeah.
And so it was very easy. And yeah, because this is the first time we audited, we didn't know how to do it. So
Yeah.
that's why, like, I didn't want any of my team members talking and saying stuff that we shouldn't be talking.
And I think what Shavini is also explaining, it's like really what the reason that we really appreciate so much OxiWear as a company, where they've been, where they're going, and like really this is only the beginning for OxiWear, is as we shared earlier, she understood the purpose of regulatory strategy, also understood the purpose and reason for clear communications and continuous partnership. And that's and I think that goes not just for Shavini but for every founder. You need to have your regulatory strategy. You need, just like you need to have your business strategy, you also need to have the right tools, the right partners to really work with you and take you through the difficult days, because it's just part of the journey of being a medical device company.
Yeah.
Because like anything that involves regulations is pretty much like, you having to check stuff with your lawyers. Right. So you don't want to sign a document without checking with your lawyers and getting in trouble and then finding out, I should have discussed with my lawyer. So it's the same with regulatory stuff. If you don't understand, it's better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah. Is there any other advice you give to founders facing their own high-stakes regulatory journeys?
I think, like I said initially, we are all new to this, unless you are a regulatory expert who has started a company, right? So
That's right.
rather than, yeah, rather than you going and, because when it comes to startup, time is money, right? So rather than you wasting time and doing stuff and having to redo everything again, which will be double the cost, you might as well involve expert who has done it, right? And take their advice and do everything following those guidelines from the beginning. Because for us, we started, like, even before we finished designing the device itself, only we started reading all the FDA requirements. So we made sure the sensors we get are these, the material we use for the manufacturing is biocompatible, right? Because we have a wellness side of the device too. But so even the wellness device, we made sure we develop it meeting all FDA regulatory requirements so that we don't need to redo, like, we don't need to manufacture two things then, right? So you have all the components, everything bought together for both, but you do the things for the two separately, right? Rather than having to do one thing differently, one thing that not like the regulatory requirements. So if you go through everything and learn exactly what you're supposed to do from the beginning, it makes the whole journey shorter, plus the expenses, you can reduce the expenses. And because some of the things like certain tests, you need to involve labs to do it. But one of the things is, because we worked with Rita, we were able to find labs which we can do it at a much lower price than paying a reputed big lab to do it at about a 10 times cost, right? And then certain tests which actually can be done in-house by us, than having to spend like hundreds of thousands of dollars to get some third-party company to do it. You can do those when you are going for your maybe your third or fourth FDA clearance, when you are a $1 billion company. But when you are a startup, you need to think about every dollar you spend. I think that's one of the reasons why we were able to get through the FDA so soon, right? And when you compare like everything, the bills we have paid to MedTech, the labs, and everything that was involved with FDA, our whole FDA process cost us around 4 million, right? But then I have friends who have spent around 22 million and still haven't even gone to FDA.
Wow.
Right.
And
So
some
it's
people over
about,
80 million.
yeah. So by having a proper plan and from day one planning it and giving, you think having experts involved is expensive, but no, it actually will reduce a lot of your expenses because you're doing everything the right way.
Mentioning what you spent versus what others have spent and they still have
Exactly.
not reached
Yeah.
clearance. Wow,
They haven't
what
even submitted yet.
yeah, what a turning point though. The moment that really makes a difference is being able to say I utilized professionals that knew how to guide me and get me where I was going, and in the end made the process easier and saved you money, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, definitely jump in and feel free to tell me about what you might think was the turning point, but it sounds like that was a really important thing.
It was because because of that we didn't need to take VC funds, right? We were able to do the whole thing just with angels who believed in us and who's on the same mission and who are not rushing us to get things done and finding shortcuts.
And that's why I keep saying that Shavini's product, OxiWear, it's only the beginning. So we are now clearly in the U.S. market, but again, it's only the beginning. And I also believe that Shavini, what she explains, and I hope that founders continue to take this message seriously. Planning is important, trusting is important. Finding the right partners to really help you is really important. Engaging the right tools is also important, because we can also waste a lot of money on a lot of different tools. So having the right size tools with the right partners, and then the FDA. I truly believe I've always seen the FDA as a partner, and that's how we have treated them all the way from the beginning to being our auditors. When they became auditors for OxiWear, to what's going to happen in the future, to our next submission, and so on. And then, of course, the people that support these businesses, like the investors, whether they are angels or VC funds. And again, like Shavini said, by managing so closely and by always having honest and open communications, we were able to get through with just the right amount of money for the product. And it's important to say for the product. And in Shavini's case, it wasn't just a straight 510K, as we heard. I mean, it did involve clinical testing.
Yeah.
And it involved a couple different clinical studies. So to be able to get through all this and successfully with such a small team and through an audit, it is truly beautiful. And
I think being transparent from day one with everyone is very important. Like, for example, because I was transparent with everything with my investors, when we needed money, it was easy to go back to them and ask them to put more money in. You have to be transparent, and at the same time, that's why I say, you need to find like-minded partners, so that this is a mission that we all have. We're all in it together.
This has been such a candid and insightful conversation. Thank you, Shavini and Rita, for sharing your stories and expertise with us today. If anyone is interested in learning more about OxiWear and its capabilities, where can they find that information?
They can go to oxiwear.com, oxiwear.com, or feel free to email us at support@oxiwear.com.
Perfect. And if our listeners want to know more about Lumen Logic, Rita, where would they find that?
lumenlogic.com.
Perfect.
And of course, they can also go to MethodSense, and they will be connected to Lumen Logic from there as well.
Great. Well, thank you for tuning in to MedTech Smarts, where we explore the real-world journeys of medical innovators. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. You can find us on your favorite platforms so you never miss an episode.